Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studios, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. Happy New Year, everyone. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. This is what I'm thinking about right now. It seems that it's a new year and even a new decade, but illegals still continue to get the royal treatment, not just in New Jersey, but throughout the country. And thankfully, the federal government is finally taking a stand, and I cannot be happier. Now, let me give you a little bit of a context here, folks, about what's going on. In a recent story published at the onset of the new year, the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, decided to focus his attention on new laws recently passed in New York and New Jersey, as well as other states throughout the country, that allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses without proof that they're here illegally. And of course, the laws do restrict data sharing with federal agencies. Now, indeed, Secretary Wolf sent a memo to all the components of Homeland Security, which include the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the Coast Guard, as well as the Transportation Security Administration, requesting a departmental study on how these laws affect its enforcement efforts for both immigration and other investigations which involve human trafficking, drug smuggling, and counterterrorism. Now, New York laws went into effect on January 1st, and New Jersey's law went into effect in late December of 2019. And of course, to no one's surprise, illegals started lining up at motor vehicle agencies in these subsequent states. Now, New York was indeed the 13th state to authorize licenses for illegals, and most of the other states do also restrict data sharing. New Jersey lawmakers, as I just mentioned, passed a similar bill this past December. Now, Governors Cuomo and Murphy, respectively, out of New York and New Jersey, have been frequent thorns in the side of the Trump administration and its efforts to restrict illegal immigration. As a matter of fact, here's a stat that should really scare you, but New York City currently is home to an estimated 500,000 illegals living there presently. Folks, that's a really, really high number, and it should concern us all. Now, also, the laws that were passed recently, not just in New Jersey, as well as New York and others around the country, prohibit that state's Department of Motor Vehicles from providing data to agencies that enforce immigration laws unless a judge signs an order for it. For example, in New York, it cut off database access to at least 3 federal agencies last week once the law went into effect on New Year's Day. Now, once again, an estimated 250,000 illegals were expected to receive driver's licenses within the next 3 years, more than half of them in New York City and also as well as New Jersey, according to the Fiscal Policy Institute, a nonpartisan, non-governmental website that sort of tracks this sort of, policy type of endeavors. Now, again, folks, let me just put this into context for everybody here because, listen, we're all children of immigrants. I know I am. Okay, my parents left, very dire circumstances more than 50 years ago. My mom left communism in Cuba, and my dad left a very mediocre economy in Colombia. And they came here for a better life. And subsequently, they did do that and, of course, provide a very good life for me, and I'm forever grateful to them. And I understand that immigration laws have changed dramatically since my parents came here. But my parents came here the right way. They came here the legal way. Now, of course, I understand that all immigrants don't have that luxury, and that continues to sort of fuel the debate that's still going on today about sort of the current, immigration crisis at the border and overall throughout the 50 states. But folks, let me just put this into context for you because you know what? It should concern you about illegals getting driver's licenses. First and foremost, we are rewarding people that are here illegally with the privilege of driving, not the right, but the privilege of driving. And I know the narrative going around is, well, Fernando, you know what? They're already here. They're already driving. They're driving their kids to school. They're driving to work. I get all that. But why are we rewarding bad behavior? Why are we rewarding illegal behavior? It's as simple as that. And you know what? I applaud Secretary Wolf for wanting to enforce the rule of law. Folks, listen, no offense, and here's a newsflash for you. Believing in the rule of law is not a bad thing. And I know a lot of liberals and I know a lot of the social justice crusaders in Trenton want you to think otherwise. But that's something that really concerns me. Because you know what? Laws like this are going to help and sort of enable more and more illegals to gravitate not just to New Jersey, but to New York and other states around the country that enable this sort of legislation to be put into effect. So it's not only enabling bad behavior, but it's going to attract more and more people to come here illegally. Why? Because they'll be able to get a driver's license. Secondly, and listen, and this is not hyperbole on my part, we all know that the potential for voter registration and voter fraud is real. This is not some right-wing talking point. This is not some conservative narrative. Folks, it happens. It's New Jersey, for God's sakes. If there's ever been a state that's synonymous with corruption and chicanery, it's the Garden State. Listen, whether you've read the book The Soprano State, which I've assigned to my students over the years, or you can do your own homework on your own time, we all know New Jersey has been infamous for really shady practices when it comes to voter registrations. And we all know, let's be very honest, we all know that Democrats in Trenton and around the state will just foam at the mouth when it comes to trying to get every vote they possibly can. And if they can register every single person, even if they're here illegally, they'll do it. Now, again, you might say, well, Fernando, what do you have the basis on? Folks, look in your own county. All right, there's 21 of them here in New Jersey. Whether it's here in Hudson County or the other 20 counties throughout the state, we've all heard of voter registration drives where people that are not citizens are being registered to vote. It happens. Okay? Again, it's not hysteria. It's not some manufactured outrage. It happens. Listen, we just went through a recent trial in Hoboken because of vote by mail fraud, which I'll get to later in this program. But folks, we should not want the electoral process corrupted. We should want the sanctity of voting to remain as it is. With citizens voting, citizens being registered to vote, this is ripe for voter registration fraud. And I'm telling you folks, it's not something that, quite frankly, you should take lightly. And the third thing that really pisses me off about this law being passed is, listen, let me just take a hypothetical here. You're driving on 287, you're driving on Route 1 and 9, you're driving on Route 3, wherever it is. Guess what, folks? Once this law passed, yes, illegals have to take their written test, they have to take their road test, and once they pass them, yes, their vehicles have to be registered, and they have to obtain insurance. So whether it's Progressive, Geico, Allstate, whatever it is, guess what? By law, these insurance companies will have to provide insurance. But guess what? They don't have to provide the full coverage. They have to provide simply the most minimal coverage possible. Why? The driver is seen as a liability. Why? They're not here legally. How can we document who they really are? That in itself, folks, is a liability. And God forbid you're driving on any of the aforementioned roads and highways I just mentioned, and an illegal rear ends you. And again, hopefully you're fine, but your car suffers some sort of damage and they have the minimal coverage, your deductible has to be used to pay for the damages. And guess what? Once you use your deductible, your premiums go up. Not the illegal driving that hits you, it's your premium that goes up. So how are we winning here? And I get it that whether it's liberals or social justice crusaders in Trenton want to advocate for some of these bleeding heart causes, folks, what they're doing is they're bleeding our pockets. I just outlined for you very clearly and very conclusively why this is a bad idea. And it does not make me racist. It does not make me bigoted. It does not make me xenophobic. I'm tired of hearing those characterizations on social media. I've talked about it on my podcast. I've talked about it on this program. And folks, I am none of the above. What I am is a concerned taxpayer. What I am is a concerned citizen about this law just being bad on all fronts. I just outlined 3 irrefutable points right now. But you know what? The other side will keep saying, you know what? It's racist, Fernando. We're marginalizing undocumented immigrants, whatever other semantics you want to engage in. Folks, it's wrong. It sends the wrong message. And right here and now, I commend Interim Secretary of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, for taking the initiative, for wanting to find out whether or not these laws actually pass the mustard. And you know what? Hopefully, he takes care of them. And hopefully, at the federal level, these laws get overturned. They're not benefiting us, folks. They're benefiting a small little demographic. And believe me, this is partisan politics at its very best. And it's pandering at its worst. And I'm hoping that this doesn't become a problem in 2020 and in the years ahead. We'll find out. But as I said, folks, illegals being here, getting driver's licenses is a bad idea. We should not be rewarding illegal behavior because it's exactly what they did in coming here. They came here illegally, and now we're rewarding them with the privilege of driving. It's not a right, folks. It's a privilege. Whether it's here in New Jersey, New York, or the other 13 states that pass these laws, you know what? Your heart might be in the right place, but you know what? Your mind and sound policy isn't. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. On the first edition of the 3-time award-winning podcast Talking the Hudson for 2020, I welcomed the chronicler-in-chief himself, Bruce Alston, from the Hudson County Chronicles. Now, first and foremost, I applaud Bruce because he's not only a reputable journalist, but he really is such a dedicated activist in the Black community, not just in Jersey City, but throughout Hudson County. And on the recent edition of the podcast, which you can listen to by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson, he joined me for over 90 minutes, and there was a plethora of topics to discuss. But first and foremost, we talked about the tragic events at the end of 2019 on the south side of Jersey City, which involved anti-Semitism and really sort of the polarizing climate that exists between the black community and the Jewish community in Jersey City. Let's hear what he had to say.
I think sometimes there's a cultural upbringing that just sticks with you. And for whatever reason, for decades, whether it's in Jersey City, Bruce, whether it's in Brooklyn, there's been that tension between the black community and the Jewish community, especially the Hasidic community, that has not gone away. And I think that, again, I'm not justifying what Joan said.
This is what I'm going to say.
But a lot of people in Jersey City, Bruce, are going to be like, you know what? Joan is probably no different than my grandmother or my mother who grew up to a certain time. And sometimes this mentality just stays so ingrained, Bruce, it's hard to sort of move away from it, Bruce. Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you to a point on that. I do agree with you on that. And this is what I said to people. There was a famous speech that Obama gave on race, right? And I thought it was one of his best speeches ever. And this is when he was a candidate. And he talked about, it was when he had the controversial pastor, Pastor Wright was his pastor, right?
Jeremiah Wright.
And he went out, and Jeremiah Wright. And he went out and he said that, hey, yes, I've heard Pastor Wright say things from the pulpit. I haven't always agreed with them. I have voiced to him privately when I didn't disagree with him. But I believe he's a good man, and you know, he went on to explain. But the other part about that speech is that he spoke about his grandmother, and how his grandmother at times he thought that she was prejudiced against black men. And he said that he would hear her say things at times that would make him cringe and like, you can't say that, right? Because it's the time. But I go to say this, though, is that he said, listen, will I love my grandmother any less? No. Do I think she's wrong for using that? Yes. And what I tell people is, Joan is someone that I know fairly well. I would say fairly well, right? Someone I have deep admiration and deep respect for. But we have to understand, our elders have seen things like your grandmother has seen, right? That it might not be socially correct to think that way today, but in their era of growing up, activism, forming opinions, right? There's things that they've seen, and us as children of theirs, really, right? We can disagree, but who are we to say to them, you're wrong? It comes out disrespectfully, you know? Now, what I'll say with Joan's words was this. I think there was a lot of emotion going on at the time. If she had said that at another period of time, I don't think it would have came across as controversial, as that much as controversial, you know? Because when you really look into her words, right, I think they were more inappropriate maybe to some than they were anti-Semitic. You know, I mean, she used the words brutes. And she wasn't calling the whole Jewish community brutes. She said brutes of the Jewish community, certain people. And we just have to understand that she's from an era that my father grew up in, is that they're always going to see race play a role, ethnicity play a role in their thinking, because they're not where we are right now. You understand what I'm saying, Bernard? They're not where we are right now.
Sure, no.
You know?
Without a doubt, Bruce was able to lay out a very sort of thorough and very detailed history about sort of the ongoing tension that exists between the black community and the Jewish community in Jersey City. Now, again, folks, we've all heard of the tragic events that happened in Jersey City on the south side at the end of December of last year. And without a doubt, the tensions are still very high in that community. Whether it was a recent trustee on the Jersey City Board of Education or sort of the ongoing language that we see on social media, this issue isn't going away anytime soon. And I'm glad Bruce was able to sort of shed light on it and really focus on whether or not this relationship between the two communities is indeed reparable. Coming up, we also talked about the upcoming referendum that seems to have passed in Jersey City about Board of Education trustees no longer being elected by the residents of Jersey City, but being appointed by the mayor. We had a pretty thorough discussion about what this means, not just for Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop, but for mayors in the foreseeable future, and quite frankly, how this right being taken away from residents is something that will not go over very well. Let's hear what he had to say about this very controversial issue.
Listen, if you want any accountability on a school board, whether it's in Jersey City or any municipality, I think the idea of a mayor and or city council and or a board of commissioners, right? Because not every municipality has a council mayor system. I don't like just the optics of a mayor. And this is nothing against Steve Fulop. So again, let me be very clear. I don't want someone to say, "Oh, Fernando's just being anti-Fulop again." No, I'm not being anti-Fulop. I'm saying this for any mayor. I don't like the idea of a mayor picking members of the Board of Education because, again, you're talking about handling a budget based on the revenue you collect from property taxes. Again, we are the highest in the country. Don't even get me started on that. But I would prefer trustees that are voted by residents to handle that.
Even if they're supported by the mayor. Even if they're supported by the mayor, at least voters have a chance to choose that.
Exactly. Give the people, give homeowners like you and I, give parents the option, the ability to vote a trustee that they believe in. But the idea that again, this is not against Stephen. I want to be clear. I don't want people to say, "Oh, Fernando's being anti-Fulop." Whether it's any mayor, I just don't like the optics, Bruce, of a mayor and or a council picking a Board of Education trustee. Again, you're right. The mayor can back a candidate, but give the parents and the taxpayers the right or the option to pick people on the Board of Education, Bruce. I mean, that's where I stand.
Yeah, I understand that, but the mayor's stance is he wants to fix the school, but he has no say. That's not flying with a lot of people.
It was a very lively conversation for over 90 minutes with Bruce Alston. And again, you can check out the episode in its entirety by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. You can do so from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Without a doubt, again, it's something that whether it's about dealing with anti-Semitism in Jersey City, or whether it's the upcoming battle when it comes to the referendum this November, there won't be a shortage of things to talk about in Hudson County's largest city. And of course, with Bruce Alston at the Hudson County Chronicles, which by the way, you can check out his news and his content by going to www.hudsoncountychronicles.com. Listen, whether it's talking about the community, whether it's about issues, or even today's political climate, there's no shortage of things to discuss. And you know what? Bruce and I will be doing that for all of 2020.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.
And now to some local stories here in the new year. Folks, I talked about this extensively at the end of 2019, and of course, it's a story that has surfaced once again in 2020. And we'll talk about an issue in Hoboken. For example, U.S. Attorney Craig Carpenito has indeed submitted an appeal of Hoboken political operative Frank Reyes' 3-month jail sentence, which was issued in U.S. District Court in Newark last December. And of course, he'll be taking up the case with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. Now again, just let me give you some context here. And again, a great story reported by my fellow journalist and colleague, John Hines from the Hudson County View. Quote, the brief says as follows: the United States of America hereby appeals to the United States Court of Appeals for the Third District from the District Court's judgment of sentence, docket entry 73, which was certified by U.S. Attorney and Chief of the Appeals Division, Mark E. Coyne, on January 2nd. Now, on December 2nd, many political observers, including myself, were stunned to discover that U.S. District Judge at the time had sentenced Frank Reyes to only 3 months in prison and a mere $50,000 fine after being convicted of vote by mail fraud in June. Now, again, let me just give you some context here. Now, his sentencing was originally scheduled for October the 3rd, but was delayed several times after his attorney, Alan Zagas, had filed a brief seeking a new trial, claiming that the testimony of several key witnesses could not be trusted since they were cooperating with the government. Judge Martini ultimately denied the request. Now, a jury of his peers convicted Rea of running a vote-by-mail fraud scheme in 2013 that involved members of his inner circle asking low-income residents to fill out vote-by-mail ballots for $50 apiece. At the time, Frank Rea was a prominent developer and was also seeking a council-at-large seat and was also looking to loosen the city's rent control laws via ballot question. Thankfully, both of those efforts were unsuccessful. Now, again, just to give you sort of a context here, folks, Frank Rea was scheduled to be sentenced on March the 1st, and no timetable has been set for the government's appeal as of this writing. And I talked about this at length last year, folks, and quite frankly, I think it's despicable what happened. Listen, everybody that lives in Hoboken or lives in Hudson County knows about Frank Rea's reputation, as well as his band of degenerates that helped him during this scheme. And what I found interesting, though, is once news came out about this appeal by the U.S. attorney, all I saw was social media and people taking to it to defend Frank Rea. As a matter of fact, whether it was on the Hudson County View's Facebook page or other platforms on social media, all I could hear were local residents and even some cronies defending Frank Rea. I would hear nonsense such as, well, he paid tuition for this many kids, or he helped pay the rent of this person, or he helped out that person. Folks, I'm going to tell you something. If you know anything about Hoboken politics, you know anything about Frank Rea, the guy has a very shady reputation. And I don't really care how much good he did. This act alone of corrupting our electoral process and really taking away from the sanctity of voting, that should be taken seriously. And I don't know what Judge Martini was thinking by only giving him 3 months in jail and a $50,000 fine. If you know anything about Frank Rea, folks, $50,000 is a drop in the bucket. And 3 months is barely a slap on the wrist. He, along with his band of despicable degenerates that comprise his little, entourage, they should all be rotten in jail. Now, the maximum penalty, according to federal law, was 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. Why didn't Judge Martini issue the maximum penalty? You know what he's telling you, folks? He's telling you that, if you commit vote-by-mail fraud or any sort of voter fraud, it doesn't matter. It's okay. We find it acceptable or we don't find it to be as serious. But guess what? In New Jersey, we continue to incarcerate people, specifically people of color, both black and brown, for marijuana, for example. We continue to keep these people in jail for something as harmless as marijuana usage. But you know what? When it comes to vote-by-mail fraud, which is a very serious federal offense, you know what? That's okay. You know what? Judge Martini's telling you, go ahead. If you can get away and with doing it, hey, be my guest. It's not serious. But let's keep incarcerating people for marijuana. That sends a really good message about how, the incongruity that exists within our criminal justice system. I don't know about you, it sends a wrong message. And when people take to social media, or even better yet, when they went to the sentencing date, and you saw people in that courtroom lining up to defend Frank Rea, well, of course they're gonna defend Frank Rea because he lined their pockets, he paid their rent, or he did some other sort of financial favors. I don't know about you folks. I don't take those people seriously. And when they take to social media and get offended about someone like myself, a reputable journalist, denouncing this really just this disgraceful sentencing and calling it what it is, absolute garbage. Oh, all of a sudden I'm someone that needs to be scrutinized? Why don't you scrutinize Frank Rea? Because somehow you think, oh, well, it doesn't matter that he did that because he did all this good. No, folks, I hate to break it to you. Let's live in the real world. I get it that sometimes good people make bad choices, but in this case, Frank Rea isn't good people. He's been bad people, and he made a bad choice, and he should be made to suffer for it, and he should be incarcerated for the maximum penalty. And so should his accomplices, who, listen, let's be honest. Rats are rats. And when rats decide to jump off the ship and save their own skins, should we look at these people any better? Of course not. So whether it's Frank Rea, whether it's Matt Colicchio, or whether it's the rest of the band of degenerates that sort of, again, comprise his entourage, they should be made an example of. They corrupted our electoral process. What they did is pretty much take away the sanctity of voting, which we all cherish and which we all take seriously, right? Well, guess what? For the foreseeable future, whether it's in Hoboken or anywhere else, how are we supposed to take voter fraud seriously when even the judge in federal court doesn't do that? It's a disgrace. So is Frank Rea. So is his entire entourage. And I'm hoping that the U.S. attorney wins his appeal because they should all be rotten in jail. Voter fraud is serious, folks. And you know what? If we're going to incarcerate people for something like marijuana or low-level offenses like that and keep them incarcerated, but we're not going to incarcerate people for voter fraud, that sends an awful message that our criminal justice system is broken. And you know what? I'm hoping that the U.S. attorney and the federal government wins this one, and all of them see their day and see their day with justice. Because you know what? They deserve it. One of the biggest surprises in 2019 and now as she takes office in 2020 was the election of East Newark Mayor Dina Grillo. Now again, next to Guttenberg, East Newark is also one of the smallest municipalities in Hudson County. And of course, with her upset victory during last June's primary, she ran unopposed as the Democratic candidate. And of course, taking office now in the new year, Dina Grillo is certainly some new blood. And of course, we got to see some of the big politicos in the county, whether it was HCDO Chairwoman Amy DeGees or other elected officials coming to her swearing-in ceremony. We all know Dina Grillo is someone that has to be taken seriously in the new year. By the way, I look forward to having her on the podcast this month, and I'll certainly bring some highlights later during the program as we're filming in the coming weeks. But without a doubt, folks, Dina Grillo is indeed new blood in the Democratic Party, and we'll see what type of difference she makes, not just for East Newark, but for the Democratic Party in Hudson County. Moving further south in Hudson County, let's go to Bayonne. And real quick here, I want to give a congratulations to a good friend of mine, Maria Vallado, as she was appointed president of the Bayonne Board of Education, which ended a 4-year term from the previous trustee who was leading the board by the name of Joe Broderick, along with Christopher Munoz, who also took over as vice president of the Bayonne Board of Education. Now again, folks, the Bayonne Board of Education has come under some scrutiny in recent years because of either mishandling of budgets or anything else, but I can tell you right now that with the appointment of Maria Vallado as its new president, I think Bayonne residents, taxpayers, parents, homeowners, everyone within that municipality can breathe a sigh of relief because I'll tell you right now, Maria Vallado is a great choice to lead the Board of Education. And you know what? For the foreseeable future, I think not just budget, but the quality of education in Bayonne will continue to improve under her leadership. So again, congratulations to Maria Vallado and Christopher Munoz at the top of the leadership with the Bayonne Board of Education. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the exceptional programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group, check out their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and also www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook and also follow them on Instagram and Twitter. In addition, the Hudson Media Group is proud to partner with NJ On Air to bring you, again, outstanding weekly programming. Check out their website, www.njonair.com. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and also follow them on Instagram and Twitter. You can also check out the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which airs live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. You can listen to it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. We have some outstanding guests come up in the month of January, folks, which include the newly elected mayor of East Newark, Dina Grillo, and of course, the Hudson County Democratic Organization chairwoman, Amy DeGees, in her regularly scheduled appearance. So there certainly won't be a shortage of things to talk about in Hudson County, and of course also in state and national politics as well. And never forget, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, you know it's Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.